we'll go ahead and get started. So hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining our webinar today around customer identity. We appreciate you taking the time to listen in. As we are all working from our respective homes, just like you, please bear with us if we do experience any technical difficulties today in this new world that we live in. So the end goal of our time today is to give you a basic understanding of how Okta's customer identity solution can integrate with your brand experience and business processes to engage your business partners and customers. As today's demo will be a high-level overview, we want to make sure to extend the offer to all viewers of a deeper dive demo and discussion of your business needs specifically as a next step option. Note, as a participant, you will be muted throughout the duration of the webinar. However, we will have a Q&A portion towards the end where we'll take questions from the chat feature in the webinar. The agenda for today includes a few slides on Active Cyber, a few words about Okta as a company, a high-level overview of the customer identity solution, and then we'll jump into the demo, and lastly, our Q&A session. With that, let me introduce you to who you will be hearing from on today's webinar. My name is Shayne Schreimann. I'm an account executive here at Active Cyber, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Also here is Jeff Williamson, a regional sales director for Okta in the Northeast, and he has graciously offered to be here to talk about Okta and their solution. Last but not least, we have Cory Dixon, our VP of Technology and Cybersecurity here at Active Cyber, and he will be presenting our demo today. A quick overview about Active Cyber and our company. So Active Cyber is an Okta reseller and services partner with over 500 Okta implementations under our belt today. We are a complex systems integrator with expertise in not only Okta and SailPoint, but also ServiceNow, Workday, VMware, CyberArk, and Adaptive Insights. We've been Okta's Professional Services Partner of the Year 4 times in a row, and we have some of the most consultants in the Okta ecosystem with the highest level of Okta certification you can have. And we have some of the highest customer satisfaction and go-to partner for complex integrations with Okta. And with that, Jeff, I appreciate you being here today. I'll now pass it over to you to tell us a little bit more about Okta.
Well, thank you, Shayne, and good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for jumping on with us today. With any luck, my high school senior and my high school freshman will stay off of Netflix per dad's orders for the next hour's time or so. I believe you should be up with my slide now. So, with no further ado, here at Okta, our mission is pretty straightforward. We're focused on enabling any organization to use any technology to help those organizations connect their people to all the technology that they need to be productive every day. Now, that can be their employee base, or their contractors, or their partners connecting to their email system, or their collaboration apps, or really anything in between. Or more germane to today's discussion, it could be their customers connecting to their mobile apps and their websites, interacting with their company through a digital channel. It's really just about enabling by removing friction, making it really easy to access stuff, making sure, of course, that it's secure, and making sure that the company has the right audit and security policies while making it really easy for the end user. Now, when you think about Okta's customer identity and access management, there are a couple of things I hope you'll keep in mind. First, you'll hear a lot of Okta folks, as well as our partners, refer to our customer solution as CIAM, C-I-A-M, okay? Second, and more importantly, there are really 4 foundational principles to remember when you think about the Okta approach. Principles that we, frankly, believe are table stakes for customer identity. First, you've got to provide a frictionless user experience. Second, you've got to enable and often increase speed to market. Third, you want to drive the centralization of access management. While, of course, finally, least but certainly not least, ensuring internet scale security. Now, whereas security and usability were traditionally often perceived to be at different ends of the user experience spectrum, at Okta, we feel that that way of thinking is really rather antiquated. Customer solutions, customer identity solutions, act as the virtual front door, keeping consumer data safe while facilitating easy access to applications and websites. A customer identity solution worthy of your company's consideration needs to encompass both authentication and authorization, as well as login experiences, user preferences, and user data across your applications and services. At Okta, we do this through a number of features and capabilities, including universal directory, single sign-on, adaptive multi-factor authorization, and extensive API. Now, when it comes to universal directory, you can build a single repository for user identity information. You can store profiles, manage passwords, apply access policies. And with Okta, of course, you do this while creating a consistent user experience across every part of your app. With our single sign-on, Okta enables you to link any set of applications with one username, one password, and one session. You can deploy pre-built integrations into apps like Salesforce, Zendesk, NetSuite, Box, the list goes on, of course, and rely on Okta for testing and maintenance of your connectors. CIAM also offers adaptive multi-factor authorization, which allows you to add a strong security layer to your authentication flow, set policies to apply MFA based on user profile, resource, and risk score, and offer a range of factors, including SMS, Google Authenticator, and Okta Verify with Push. Finally, our resilient, scalable, extensive API sets us apart, allowing integrated customer experience, modern authentication, easy integration with your existing solutions. So, hey, I know that was a good deal of information in a rather short amount of time. And if you're anything like me, you learn visually. And that's why I'm so happy at this point to hand the reins to Cory, who's going to walk you through a demonstration of the solution. Cory, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff. That's a good setup and a good tee up for everything we're going to go into. So as we move into the demo portion and kind of want to set the stage a little bit, today we're specifically going to look at a business-to-business registration scenario. And it's one that I think we're seeing more frequently, that it's reducing the friction for end user sign up. At the same time, integrating that registration with a more complex business process, and integrating it with the end-to-end brand experience that the business wants to present. So we're going to look at kind of the request portion for B2B, integrating this with an ITSM centric solution for business process management around the review and approval process, ultimately tying that back into Okta to enable final access. Okta actually plays a central role in this entire piece. That's why we kind of refer to it as an identity-centric approach to B2B registration and approval and enablement, focused heavily on that customer experience brought together by Universal Directory and Okta's extensive API. We're trying to simplify that self-service process and extend Okta and the identity throughout the business process. While we're looking at ITSM specifically right now, we're going to actually look at Jira Service Desk. It's important to really understand that this is not just a Jira Service Desk integration. This is a ServiceNow integration. It's CRM, it's e-commerce and marketing platforms. We can come back to this kind of at the end to give an end-to-end view of how the architecture of this works together. But for now, let's go ahead and flip into the nuts and bolts of the demonstration. One of the other pieces we're going to be looking at today is a challenge that we see frequently, which is getting end users, especially customers, to sign up for multi-factor. And one of the approaches we took with this was to integrate multi-factor authentication as the actual only form of authentication, using Okta's ability to chain factors together. In this case, we're going to look at one factor, but we simplify that registration process by putting multi-factor authentication in as part of the initial sign-up process before the account is ever actually enabled. Instead of boring you with filling out the entire form, we'll do a little form magic and come in with a new account, filling out the form the way we normally would. However, right, versus a consumer perspective, we're actually looking at this being more data being collected from a B2B scenario. So think of this in terms of partners or distributors or suppliers where they may be uploading financial documents, right, or providing additional contractual information. We are using this downstream for routing and approval process. When we go through the overall submission and bring that in, the next step that the user is actually going to see is that mobile enrollment. This is all Okta's API, actually enabling this initial registration and validation. And once we've verified the SMS factor, that now becomes our primary authentication mechanism. At this stage, we have actually created the user at Okta, we have staged them, and we have assigned them to the multi-factor authentication with SMS. However, they are placed in a sequestered group, meaning that any Okta administrator or user that enables that user doesn't actually grant them access to any downstream application. That all happens with the B2B process integration. So when we start looking at how does this integrate with that business process and the review and approval, we really say, we've got a registration request that's come in. We can start work on it. And the other piece that we can actually go through here is see all the information that they've entered and provide fixes to this. This one's a little arbitrary, but like I said, this can be the contractual contract documents or financial agreements, additional review and approval, with two-stage approvals. Anything that actually comes through that business process now is separate from the initial identity creation, but all of that ties back to the identity using the Okta user ID so that when this is finally approved or rejected, we know exactly what account to update, and we use our middle tier API layer to communicate with Okta and assign them to the appropriate group or groups and activate their overall account. The group and groups are then associated to the choices made in the business process. So think about B2B onboarding with ServiceNow or B2B onboarding with CRM and assigning users to various roles that then translate into Okta roles and Okta provisioning that gives different customers access to different applications or different rights. So on final approval, we just use Jira's webhook approach to fire back off to the API using the Okta user ID to update that original user. And then go through the login process on the Okta side or the application directly. They've been placed in a group that is SMS only authentication. Again, no password for this account. When they actually receive their SMS code that they registered during the registration process, they're able to verify and authenticate. In this case, we're going to actually just take us into the end user settings and see that the information that we updated without the user on the Jira Service Desk guide also has flowed back into Okta so that their profile is more accurate. I think this becomes an important piece when we start looking at marketing analytics and e-commerce integration, or especially supplier e-commerce integration for B2B, of updating additional roles and rights that the user may not know or the user may not have any access or information about, but really drives what their ultimate end user experience is. All of this tied to the identity means that we can get that 360-degree view of the customer driven by their ID, especially across devices, and really enrich that customer profile. That comes back to the overall architecture diagram. In this case, this middle tier API is what's orchestrating the behavior between Okta and the Jira Service Desk components, but none of this could really be possible without Okta's broad API and the ability for us to very easily and remotely control that and orchestrate those decisions and have that level of standard in place. And with that kind of wraps up that portion of the demo, and I'll hand it back to Shayne to you for any Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Cory. Much appreciated. So I'll go ahead and start taking questions. If you want to put them in the chat box, should be to your right. And then I'll just read off. I know we had one come in while you were presenting. So I'll go ahead and start with that one. First question here, what is a typical timeline for implementing this?
The timeline, I think, is more dependent on the complexities of the business process. I think from a user registration perspective and integrating with the brand, we can get up and running very, very quickly. We'd like to do these in iterations and actually start with, kind of that MVP or initial kind of demonstration of value, put the B2B registration or consumer registration component in place. That's usually only a couple weeks to actually get some of those pieces in running. But how we integrate with Okta and how we kind of build on top of past success and actually measure that kind of customer engagement and the effect of the brand experience is usually over a longer period of time, but in short iterations with value demonstrated at each stage.
Thanks, Cory. Next question we have here, what is the first step in getting this process off the ground?
I would say that the first thing that we want to do is probably have an overall discussion of what the business value drivers are. How are we trying to onboard, let's say, B2B consumers or end customers? How are we trying to engage with them and identifying what those personas look like and how that customer journey is going to be affected? We typically recommend, doing a pilot group, right, or an initial kind of rollout to trusted advocates where you can get honest and direct feedback from them. That kind of helps shape the overall, long-term approach. And I think that first step is really more of a discussion on this is what we're trying to do and how can we increase our security posture, be identity centric, and enrich and kind of get greater engagement with our customers.
Thanks, Cory. Next question we have, what are the common pitfalls you see after launch and how do we avoid them?
I would say pitfalls after launch tend to be not measuring customer engagement, right? And not listening to kind of how the customer is involved, and continuing to kind of iterate across those capabilities. I think one of the benefits that we see with Okta, and given its API in the CIAM space or that customer identity space, is the ability to start bringing just not necessarily your IT aspects, but your marketing and user experience aspects into the fold, and actually looking at A/B and multivariate testing, integration with customer experience management and CRM as part of the end-to-end customer engagement lifecycle, and really extending that journey so that the consumer has a consistent experience, and you as a business are really seeing all the benefits of the various systems and tools that you've already put in place to kind of track and measure and analyze those components.
Awesome. Thanks, Cory. I believe if anyone has any final questions, please put them in the chat, but I believe that's all we had for today. Again, really appreciate all your time on joining today's webinar, and please do reach out to us if you do have any questions or want to see a deeper dive demo. But yes, appreciate it, and thanks everyone.